Power Rangers has so much potential. It's absolutely crazy how it's not been utilized properly, and I literally wanted to talk about it. Now, to my understanding, when Saban sold his stuff to Hasbro, then it would mean that he sold absolutely everything. Master Rider, Big Bad Beetleborgs, VR Troopers, and if there's anything I'm missing, let me know in the comments. Bar Mystic Knights of Tir Nogue. Now, to give you a kind of a bit of an update, if I do go over it, VR Troopers has actually now come into the comic area. So, yeah, they're in the comics, so we're now seeing something at least, but I want to kind of add more to all of this. But in general, I just really wanted to kind of like let you know, because I know comments be like, oh yeah, but they're just bringing VR Troopers in. Yeah, I know, but when I wrote this, I didn't know. Anyway, let's continue on. Power Rangers has its massive universe from the comics, the lore of any of the TV shows, so why not take inspiration from anything from these and kind of like create something? Now, one thing I am wondering is, could Hasbro actually access anything from Toei? Could they say, hey, we want any of the Kamen Rider suits, could you send some, could you lend us so we could make a brand new series? But that could actually lead into more series and start the first in the Hasbro universe. We're going to go with Rangerverse because that's so much better. I think there would be a lot of fans that if you took something from, say, Kamen Rider or anything like that and actually created a brand new universe, you know, you could do something. Kamen Rider could be a much darker part of the franchise for them, which I think would work really, really well. At this point, I would say all the franchises need to be figured out properly and to where that they would be. First of all, let's talk about Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider has a large cast at times, so figuring out what you want to do with this, if you want to make your own footage, if you wanted to go back to adapting footage from Toei, there's so much that you could do here. One of the main things you could do would be that you'd have a new property. Kamen Rider didn't really get looked into by Master Rider and Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, or Dragon Knight, whichever one it is. So you have like two shows that were kind of adapted, but nothing else. Like, this is something that you could actually sit down and go, we need to market this and we need to make it absolutely amazing. You could bring in the other Power Rangers as well, like if you wanted to kind of like do random stuff, bring in Tokuja into like, say, Kamen Rider, whatever you wanted to do, and kind of link them all together. If you just generally thought, do you know what, let's have a little bit of imagination on this one. Now, if Hasbro didn't want to do the same thing with adapting, you know, a new cast of Kamen Riders, then you could literally just keep the same cast along the side and go, hey, let's just actually have them transfer the powers, let them become the next Kamen Riders and stuff like that. So you could literally just have one person. You don't actually have to have loads. The only thing that would probably change would be the way that most of it's shot, so it's kind of a bit weird. If one person's really hyper and then suddenly they're really like slow, then obviously that would be a thing. But anyway, you could utilize this so much and make brand new content that would lead into a whole new universe, which would be really exciting. You could write very similar to how Kamen Rider is for everyone. So I think that there is a lot that you could do with Kamen Rider in general. Now I'm going to move on to Big Bad Beetleborgs. This is something that I think would be so unique that if you brought back the original cast because they're adults and show the kind of like lifestyle that they had as Beetleborgs, the kind of like the, in a way, the trauma that they've had or the experience that they've had. You know, you don't have to be like, oh shit, let's just add kids into this. You could say, no, this is keeping with the original actors in the show, and that would be absolutely cool. You could create brand new suits because obviously Metal Heroes isn't about anymore. You could make it as sleek as you want or whatever you wanted, and I think that would be so cool to do. Again, get rid of the comedy thing with, like, say, the monsters and Flabber. I think you would have a solid, and I mean solid, series. Now think of it like this: Hasbro has a huge library to choose from when you have all of these like kind of like productions behind you, these products effectively. Normally this is like a company's wet dream, knowing that you can make toys from pretty much anything, that you could create something from anything and actually be like, hey, we don't really need to do that much work. We have so much stuff to kind of use, so why not utilize it? Why not sit down, have a department that is dedicated to, you know, the Saban universe or whatnot, or the Hasbro universe, and actually create it. You could, this is someone's wet dream of creating so much cool stuff, so many cool toys at the same time, and yet it's just lying there. What are you doing, Hasbro? God damn. The previous Hasbro CEO actually passed on, and now that the new one's about, they just can't be bothered to look into this, to actually sit down and go, hey, we could actually make some really cool toys or video games or whatever. And it really kind of like bothers me that they're just not bothering to do anything. Like it baffles my mind on how much money was spent, and yet they've not really made a fraction of that back. You know, we've just had an entire whole auction of all the costumes and stuff, and that made just over $3 million compared to how much that they spent originally on acquiring all this, and yet they're not making anything. It just kind of makes me go, why aren't you dedicating someone to work on this properly? It's not like the Power Ranger universe hasn't expanded. You know, look at MMPR, it actually introduced Master Rider. Ninja Steel had Sheriff Skyfire, which was Jiraiya from Metal Heroes. Space Sheriff Gavin, again from Metal Heroes. Either way, you have a universe that's being built. Why not actually expand it to many new things? You've made the suits look good, you've given them stories, so why not take the next step and build on those stories to create something? You could do a whole space police thing with loads of new characters always interacting and keep it going. It literally writes itself. Anyway, moving on to another thing would be like, say, the Mystic Knights of Tir Na Nog. Now, you could have made the teens version of Game of Thrones or anything that is in the fantasy genre with this version. You could have gone to the same locations as Game of Thrones and done some stuff there. You could have done so much just with the actual brand and lead into something completely different that no one has really seen before. I know it didn't do very well back in the day, but you could easily adapt something to make it work, to kind of make it more upbeat than what we got back in the day. I was not a huge fan of Mystic Knights, but it was okay. Again, I didn't really watch it, but you know, you could easily make stuff that people would generally be interested in with the whole fantasy setting, etc, etc. VR Troopers, like we've now got it in the comics and whatever they're going to go with, but with VR Troopers for now, you could do something like cyber security, you know, a more unique storytelling and build up a story from there. Or you could carry on, maybe not do the whole thing where Ryan's got to find his father, but you could generally have maybe the same sort of thing. A cyber security attack is coming up and you've got to defeat it. Do something a little bit different, have unique suits. I know I keep saying this and it's a lot harder to do, but I generally kind of think that if you put enough money into this and actually treat it properly, you could build up something that would last for a long time, would produce so many new toys that could fund all of this, or stick this on YouTube and make money. That's a whole nother video anyway. But the fact is, you have all these unique universes that could interlink and work really, really well. And Hasbro is just sleeping on this. They're not doing anything. And it really infuriates me that they have this beloved franchise that has a huge fan base behind it and another fan base that could be overseas. And yet they're not doing anything and they're just focusing on other little things. It's a little bit frustrating, and I know that every single Range fan is finding that. So with bringing this video to a close, I generally think that you could create some new IPs, expand on the universe and expand on previous universes, make something a little bit more different, make something a lot more interesting. You know, the comic books are doing it. We've seen it with Amy Jo stuff. We've seen it with what Boom Studios is doing now. I generally think that you could make this beautiful world and actually have so much more in depth, so much more raw stories that it would be absolutely fantastic. You could even create your own things that would work alongside it if you didn't want to use anything from what I've just said. But yeah, I generally think this would be cool. The crossovers would be absolutely legendary, and I think it would be absolutely fine. But I am going to leave it there. What are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you think that I am wrong? Let me know down below in the comments and give me a reason why, and let's discuss all of this. If you want to check out the channel memberships or even the Patreon, then links are in the description down below. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. I want to say a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters, and I wanted to shout out Kimono Cat. Your help goes a long way to help support the channel, and if you want to help support the channel, the links to my Patreon and channel memberships are listed below in the description.
あらあら、チャンネルをサポートしてくれてありがとうございます。チャンネル登録、高評価お願いします。以下のリンクから商品を入手することができます。